there's an overall bylaw, but you can tweak it kind of thing. All right, in a recent publication, folks, it was shared that 85% of stratas in Jamaica are unsuccessful in getting owners to pay or comply with strata bylaws. Here to give us some insight is Realtor Ariel Menzie from Realtor Associate. Welcome to Smile Jamaica.
Hi, thank you for having me.
What's a strata?
What's a strata? All right, a strata, a term that was coined back in Australia, I believe, maybe in the 1960s. It was a way that individuals can share ownership or get ownership of a property, as it were, and then, of course, have shared ownership of the other elements of the property. So, in this case, you would own your apartment, and you would have shared ownership of the grounds, the gardening, the landscaping, that kind of stuff, the pool, the gym, jogging trails, as they are.
And I have to pay for all of that.
It comes at a cost, yeah.
Yeah. Even though the place belongs to me, the apartment itself, I still have to pay someone to cut the lawn in front of Empress's place.
Well,
I'm being serious when I said
I figure.
Yeah.
What you're really doing is ensuring that your property or that entire property looks good and the value is maintained for an extended period of time.
Let me ask you, Ariel.
Yes.
So I purchased an apartment. Do I sign a contract to say that I will adhere to the strata bylaws and the variation of such for this complex?
I guarantee you do.
Right.
What tends to happen in acquiring land or ownership of property, things like that, there's a myriad of contracts that come into play, which is why we encourage clients to get yourself a team. You need a lawyer to decode that old English writing that, all those laws come into place. So speaking specifically to the laws around strata, it's going to be noted in that contract.
Okay.
You're going to get information on that bylaws.
Right.
It is important for especially your lawyer to just, break it down for you.
Okay. I want to talk about the lawyers and property in a minute, because some are very expensive. And if you can decode that old English language, does the law say you need a lawyer? That's a whole nother conversation.
A whole other conversation.
All right. Can I represent self is another one. But anyway, I'm just putting it out there.
We put that
so,
down.
according to an article published recently in the Jamaica Observer, it stated that 85% of owners of Strata Jamaica are unsuccessful. 80% of the strata in Jamaica are unsuccessful in getting owners to pay and comply with the strata laws. Elaborate on that for us.
All right, so what has happened is that, again, everybody has their own opinion in terms of what should be paid for, what should be covered, why should I pay X amount of fees. So over time you find that some persons become lackadaisical, maybe the term, stop paying, pay half year.
Non-compliant.
You're right, and it does become a big problem. From there it becomes a matter of now enforcement, all right? What happens when you don't pay?
What happens when you don't pay?
Well, what happens when you don't pay, you have a few options to explore. It really does start with a conversation. We do encourage the proprietors, the Strata Corporation, to have a conversation first, Let's have an off-the-book conversation. If the off-the-book conversation doesn't work, then the Commission of Strata and Corporations are going to then encourage you to put something in writing.
Okay.
Look, you are out X amount of months. We're asking that you comply, and they're also encouraged to ensure that they provide you with that outline. Okay. How much is owed? This is it. From there, if you still are not compliant or not looking to be compliant, what then can happen is that the Strata Corporation, your scheme, as it were, can apply for a power of sale. So they can, in drastic means, sell that property to recover.
You mentioned some of the stuff that you would need to pay for.
Yeah.
And you said jogging trail and tennis court, swimming pool. You also have to pay for someone, a professional, who would look after the grounds.
Yes, most certainly.
You pay for you pay for security.
Yes, most definitely.
What does it mean by providing common areas with utilities? And it says electricity and water. What does that mean?
All right. So in that apartment complex, as you might understand, there's going to be lighting around the pool. There may be light in the pool, depending on how wonderful you want it to look. So you're going to be paying for that. Or we'll share that payment.
Yeah.
There's also, you know, garbage collection, things like that. All that is a shared expense in those.
What does the expense look like, Ariel? An average, whatever, a 12 units,
Yeah, I was going to say.
24 units type of complex. What does your strata contribution look like?
It does depend on a lot more things. If it's a basic unit, you could look at maybe $3,000, but of course it's going to go up.
A month?
Right.
Okay.
It's going to go up depending on what is there. So of course, if you have a pool, that's a bit more maintenance involved. If depending on how many units are there, there's more garbage collection. You're going to have to pay for that. Depending on how many securities you want. You want it armed. You want canines on the ground. So
Empress already asked the question about signing a contract.
Right.
In that contract, does it tell you what can happen if you don't do what the contract says? Does it say, all right, here's a contract, you're going to pay for this, that, and if you don't pay for it, we're going to sell your property in 2 weeks or a month. Is that a part of the contract?
It will speak to you, it's going to speak to the Strata Act. From that point, you will need to educate yourself on what the Strata Act is.
Okay.
And again, the Commission of Strata Corporation is there. It's information that you can get online. It's information
So
that
I
you
will
can go
know
there
from day one that I need to do this, and if I don't do this, this can
That's
happen.
the
And I
result.
will know this from day one.
It is important that you have that team. So if you get yourself a pretty good realtor, you get yourself a good lawyer, they'll sit and have that conversation with you. It is important to ask as many questions as you want. This is
So when you said good lawyer, no, I want to remind people, when you're buying an apartment or a house, it is a very costly affair.
True.
And people must understand that you need to have your 10% and all these other fees, right? Put down. It's not easy.
It's not easy. It's not
easy.
easy.
I'm just saying.
It's the biggest investment you'll probably make for your entire life.
Yeah, that's
You know,
true.
you have to pay
You have to invest.
serious attention to it.
Let me ask you something. Recently, the House of Parliament made an amendment to the Noise Abatement Act. I think they're saying that you can have parties till 2 a.m. during the festive season, and then 4 a.m. I think on the weekends. Now, how does that work in a complex? I have my newborn. I'm just trying to, I'm just saying.
I understand.
I have a newborn, and it's Saturday night, and my baby's crying, and I'm tired. I'm breastfeeding all night. I just want to sleep. But my neighbor in my complex decides to them a boom, boom, boom till 4 a.m. Help me, Ariel. How do we manage it in this new community living?
All right, and it comes back to the bylaws again. It is pretty important to understand what the bylaws are and what is covered by the bylaw. In very many cases, they shouldn't be making too much noise to disturb the neighbor, especially in those small spaces. So there's more than likely something that speaks definitively to that. If it's not spoken to definitively, then as a corporation, we all need to sit down and say, well, all right.
Table.
Yeah, we should kind of make an amendment to that.
I'm not convinced we need a lawyer sitting with us now. Because when you say, read the bylaws, hear me, I always say that.
Yeah, but at the same time, if I'm having a party, I could just go to my neighbors and tell my neighbor them, say, I'm having something tonight.
True. And again, it comes back to just the conversation.
Yeah.
And that's what happens with a lot of us here. We don't even have the conversation. We need to.
Yeah.
It starts with the conversation. From there, it's easier to, get it
And
done.
what if your neighbor's cooking some food you don't like tripe? And you don't like this?
I don't know if that goes in the bylaws, but, conversation. Let's have a conversation.
Thanks a lot for coming.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me.
When that tripe up one, all right.
Just
Why are you taking my pen?
borrowing your pen.
Okay. Pen. All right. So thank you, Ariel Menzie from the Realtor.
I'm a Realtor associate with Keller Williams.
Yes, and he cares about people. He cares about homeowners, and that's why he's here. But you know what? Maybe we do need a lawyer next to you next time. All these bylaws. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. It's important that we have the conversation.
It is.
And all the best to all the people dreaming of their new home next year, 2020. All right, call this man right here. He'll help you out. Yeah. All right, coming up, the great...
Neville Bell.
No, Tanya Stevens takes a smile.
She too.
The great
Neville Bell.
Tanya Stevens takes the stage
too.
and talks about her latest project.
Me and her with that one. My sister.
Your
My
sister?
sister.
God help her.
No, my sister.
We have the Brata till 9 a.m., so stick and stay. We'll soon come.